The millionaire yelled at his secretary, but her response left everyone frozen in shock. It was a regular Tuesday in the high-powered office of Sterling Enterprises, where glittering glass ceilings rose to dizzying heights. It's the kind of place where success is measured in dollar signs, and reputations are forged in the boardroom. But this day turned sour in an instant. Everyone froze as the millionaire, Henry Sterling, bellowed at his secretary, Alice, a woman with nerves of steel and a sharp wit sharper than any blade. His voice sliced through the air like a laser. Panic swirled in the room, faces blanched, eyes wide. How could you let this happen? He roared, his face flushed with rage, fists clenched like coiled springs ready to snap. The air felt electric, charged with unsaid words hanging heavy like fog. Alice stood motionless, her usually vibrant green eyes now dark pools of uncertainty, her chest tight with the weight of the moment. Every employee's heart raced, pulses quickening as they braced for her response. What could possibly come next? This was not just a simple reprimand, it was a spectacular clash of titans in a universe that expected obedience over rebellion. Whispers scattered around the room like dry leaves, reality bending under tension. Then it happened. Alice uncoiled herself like a spring. "I quit," she declared loudly, her voice strong and fierce. Gasps erupted. An office normally full of bustling phone rings and typing fingers fell into a deafening silence. She reached for her desk, grabbing the stack of files like they were weighty stones. In that moment, she wasn't just a secretary, she was a woman reclaiming her power. Shocking. Bold. Galvanizing. Like an explosion in slow motion, her words rattled everyone's core, leaving them gaping. Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Moments passed like an eternity. Henry's expression shifted, mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air, bewilderment painted across his face. The once powerful man stood reduced to a tableau of disbelief. A flicker of something more profound crossed Alice's face. Was it fear or exhilaration? The tension in the air felt muddled, sharper than a knife's edge. No one saw it coming. It was dramatic chaos wrapped in mundane office life, and then, as if caught in a racing tide, the sound of an emergency alarm burst through the room, startling everyone back to reality. Red lights flashed. Heavy footsteps echoed as security rushed in. The crowd stirred, eyes darting between Alice and the panic unfolding outside the windows. What had triggered that alarm? A sinking feeling rolled through the pit of everyone's stomachs. What would happen next? Alice's heart raced, mirroring the frantic rhythm around her. Was this all part of a grand plan, or had she just ignited a fire that would consume everything? The questions hung heavy in the air, as they waited for the shocking climax that loomed just beyond the horizon. The scene erupted into chaos as the alarm continued to blare, piercing the tension like a knife. Employees scrambled for the exits, eyes wide with confusion and fear. Henry, still frozen in shock, snapped out of his stupor and turned to face Alice, rage mingling with incredulity. "What did you do?" he demanded, his voice barely audible over the frantic din. Alice's heart thundered in her chest. The files in her grasp felt like lead weights. Why was the alarm going off now? Her bravado from moments ago faded, replaced by a rush of dread. She turned her head, trying to catch a glimpse of the floor-to-ceiling windows, but all she could see was a flood of bodies moving, overwhelmed by a confusion they didn't understand. "Get back to your desks," Henry boomed, his hand slicing through the air in an attempt to restore order. "This is just a drill. Calm down." But his voice rang hollow, uncertainty spinning in the corners of the office like dust in the light. Alice hesitated. Was this a drill, With adrenaline coursing through her veins, she felt dizzy, caught between staying to clarify her decision or fleeing with the others. But then, a new thought gripped her, a possibility that put ice in her veins. What if this chaos was no accident? What if someone was using her fiery moment to cover something far more dangerous? Suddenly, a figure moved forward from the shadows at the edge of the office, a man Alice recognized but didn't trust. Mark, the head of security, approached with an intimidating presence, eyes scanning the frantic employees like a hawk searching for prey. "Alice, we need to talk," he said, his voice steady and commanding. "Now." She gasped, flinching at the reminder of her recent outburst. The air felt as if it were closing in around her. "There's an alarm." "It's not just an alarm," Mark urged, unraveling the tension coiling in the air. "There's been a breach. We need everyone to stay calm and follow protocol." "A breach?" The word shot through Alice like a shot of ice. She glanced around. Was this an inside job? The alarm wailed, and tension cut through the office like a blade. People were still vying for control in the claustrophobic chaos, but now a different kind of fear hung heavy. Is that why Henry was so mad? Her mind raced, memories of their argument flashing through her like frames from a movie. What if he knew? Before she could speak, another piercing shout cut through everything. "Nobody moves." Mark's voice commanded as he rushed to the center of the room. "We have reports of potential sabotage. I need all of you to remain in your seats. This could put your lives in danger." Alice felt her heart drop. The stakes had just raised themselves to an unforgiving height. Her pulse quickened, both out of fear and out of an instinctual urge to act. She stepped back, her mind racing. Though she was determined to reclaim her power, the danger was looming with a ferocity she hadn't anticipated. In that moment, Alice realized she had a choice: stay, confront Henry and uncover the truth behind the alarm, or make a break for it before the impending storm descended. Time seemed to stretch as the alarm continued its relentless cry. And as her mind raced down countless paths, one undeniable truth flashed before her: she was no longer just a spectator in this game, she was a player. What if the answer to the chaos lay deeper within the heart of Sterling Enterprises? It was a gamble. But when the stakes were this high, she knew she had to decide quickly. The air in the office thickened with uncertainty as she opened her mouth to speak, but the sound of shattering glass erupted from the east wing, sending everyone into a frenzied panic once more. What had just been set into motion and what awaited them on the other side of this madness? The shatter of glass echoed like thunder through the chaotic office, and Alice felt the heat of panic radiate from the crowd around her. Faces twisted in fear as people scrambled backward, pushing against one another in an attempt to escape the unseen threat. She could barely think over the cacophony, her heart racing in time with the alarm's furious wail. "Stay calm. Everyone, stay calm." Mark shouted again, his voice strained but firm. He moved through the crowd like a lighthouse beam, trying to find order amidst the storm. But Alice could see the flicker of anxiety behind his composed facade. Someone screamed, a high-pitched, piercing sound that cut through the air. Alice's instincts kicked in, and she turned to look toward the east wing, where the noise had originated. She caught a glimpse of red under the fluorescent lights. Was it blood? "No," she whispered, her breath catching in her throat. The chaos around her faded into a dull roar as her focus narrowed. A deep-seated fear rippled through her. What had really happened? Henry's voice broke her reverie, laced with panic as he barked orders to the confused masses. "Get away from there. Move back. We need to assess the situation." But even he seemed rattled as he kept glancing toward Mark, who was stern-faced, assessing the unfolding chaos like a chess player conceiving a devastating move. Before Alice could process it, she found herself instinctively moving toward the eastern corridor, drawn by a strange compulsion. She didn't want to be a spectator any longer. She had to know. Why were they being attacked? What role did she play in all this? Then a loud crash reverberated again, this time closer, sounding as if it came from the conference room. With every step closer, dread tightened around her chest, but her legs propelled her forward. She had to see for herself, had to understand what was happening. "Alice, no. Get back." Henry called out, but she barely heard him. Inside the conference room, shadows danced wildly, and Alice's gaze locked onto the figure at the far end. It was a man, one she recognized from the company's past, Russell, a former employee fired under mysterious circumstances. They said he had lost everything and had all but vanished. Now, he stood in the room amid the chaos, poised with something glinting in his hand. "Russell?" she whispered, incredulous, feeling as if the world had slipped off its axis. "Turn back now, Alice," Mark shouted, anxiety slicing through his voice, but it felt too late that he turned to the crumpled paper scattered on the floor and the sharp shards that mirrored the fear in the room. With every ounce of fear in her veins, she edged forward, drawn to the man she thought was just a ghost of the past. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice trembling but firm. "I'm here to finish what I started," he snarled, eyes darkened by desperation. "They took everything from me. Now it's your turn to answer for your silence." Alice's heart raced, caught in a tempest of confusion and terror. Something shifted in Russell's grip. Was that a weapon? She felt time freeze, every heartbeat a drumroll to something terrifyingly imminent. In that moment, she realized the stakes were higher than she ever imagined. The alarms wailed, the chaos swirled, and in the eye of that storm stood a man ready to unleash chaos on chaos. "What do you mean, finish?" she asked, even as she fought a growing urge to retreat. The room fell silent, people watching her wide-eyed, breaths held. Russell's smile turned dark, and he stepped forward, the weapon glinting ominously as he spoke. "It's time you all knew the truth. What was he planning? Would anyone stop him?" As the weight of both fear and responsibility pressed down on her, Alice understood there was no going back now. The truth would come crashing down, but how much would it cost? Russell's eyes flickered with a wild intensity, and Alice felt the crowd behind her shrink back as if his words formed an invisible wall. The room pulsed with a tension so thick it could almost be sliced. She could hear her own pulse drumming in her ears, drowning out the world around her. The truth? What truth? She pressed, her voice trembling, her body tense like a coiled spring. He laughed, a harsh, hollow sound that echoed against the walls. "You really have no idea, do you? All this time, you believed you were part of a family, a team. But let me show you the real company. The lies, the betrayals, the secrets hidden behind closed doors. You've all been blissfully unaware." Alice's breath hitched. Blood drained from her face as the pieces rushed together in her mind like a jigsaw puzzle coming to life. She could almost feel the weight of everything she had overlooked, the whispers, the shadows, the strange fires singeing the edges of her reality. "Russell, this isn't you," she said, desperation creeping into her tone. "You don't have to do this. We can talk." He shook his head, stepping closer, the weapon catching the harsh fluorescent lights, casting serpentine shadows across the floor. "Talk? No, Alice. Talking is what got me fired. What got me? Nothing but silence. Now it's time for action, for real consequences." A wave of uncertainty swept through the crowd. They shifted uneasily, fingers fiddling with phone screens, glances flitting between Alice and Russell. Some began edging toward the exits, eyes darting, but none dared make a move, caught between allegiance and fear. Henry and Mark stood at the periphery, scanning the room, searching for a way to gain control. Despite being seasoned professionals, dread hung around them like an oppressive fog. "Russell," Henry called out, voice steely but hollow. "Whatever happened, we can try to make it right. There are ways to resolve this without what? Without justice." Russell interrupted, his voice rising. "You don't get it. It's not just about me. It's about every single person who was crushed under the weight of this place." The silence stops here. Alice fought an internal battle, feeling compelled to interject, to save them and to save him. "You don't want this," she exclaimed, propelling herself forward against the tide of fear. "We can find a way to address it. There are people willing to listen. Just put down the weapon and let us talk." But his gaze remained cold and distant, revealing more than just a shattered soul. It hinted at a recklessness that terrified her. She could sense the fragility of their situation, like standing on a precipice over an endless abyss. "You think you can fix this with words? Sometimes words are all we have left," Alice shouted back, desperation flaring within her. And then it happened. Russell raised the weapon, the glint in his eyes morphing into a dark tempest. Panic sparked in Alice's chest like flickers of a firework about to explode. "Enough!" he bellowed. The crowd recoiled, a collective gasp sweeping through the room. All eyes locked onto Alice as she took one step closer, trembling yet resolute. "Please," she said, her voice softer now, yet piercing through the fog of fear. "We're not your enemies. Let us end this cycle of revenge." Boxed in by the towering emotions around her, Alice felt the ground shift beneath her. Russell hesitated, just for a moment, a flicker of doubt crossing his pained features. "You think you can change everything? You're naive." "Maybe so," she replied, heart pounding, "but it's better than letting it end like this." Silence enveloped them, an aching stillness, the calm attention of the storm before it unleashed. Russell's eyes burned with a mix of anger and confusion, battling against something painful within him. Then the shrill alarm erupted again, slicing through the silence, reminding them of their chaos. A decision hung in the air, potent and profound. What would he choose? Could words truly alter the course of destiny, or was fate already sealed within that moment, poised on the brink of destruction? The weapon trembled in Russell's grip, the echoes of his past clawing at his mind. What would come next? And then his answer followed, an unexpected twist in a spiral of revelations waiting to surface. The decision in Russell's eyes flickered like a failing light bulb. Just as the silence threatened to swallow them whole, he lowered the weapon slightly, almost imperceptibly. Shockwaves rippled through the crowd. Was he wavering? Alice held her breath, hope bubbling at the edges of her fear. "I don't want this, Alice." Russell spat, his voice cracking. "You think I chose this? You think I wanted to end up like this?" He gestured wildly, his frustration echoing off the walls like a trapped animal. "You don't even know the half of it." "Then let me in," Alice urged, her voice trembling gently. "Tell me. Show me what the truth looks like." His eyes flared, but they softened ever so slightly. It was fleeting, a flicker of the man she once knew, engulfed in layers of pain and bitterness. "You want to save me? You can't save someone who is already buried." He stepped back, the weapon now a mere extension of his fury, trembling in his grip as if caught in a wrestling match between two opposing forces. The man he was and the man he'd become. Alice searched the faces in the crowd. Mark was frozen, a mixture of fear and resolve wrestling within him. Henry leaned forward, sensing an opening. "Russell, think about your life," he said, voice laced with urgency. "There's still a chance for you to turn this around." Russell laughed again, but this time it wasn't the manic laughter of before. It was hollow, devoid of joy. "Turn what around?" "The truth. That I'm just another discarded pawn in this corporate chess game. You think I'll walk away from this scot-free? No, it's time for the queen to fall, and I want to be the one kneeling." Fear dripped like sweat down Alice's spine as Russell turned the weapon fully toward the crowd now. A collective gasp filled the space, and she felt the surge of energy shift again. "You all hear me? Each one of you has blood on your hands. You've turned your backs so many times." The accusation came like a storm, tearing at the fragile underpinnings of their shared history. "No," Alice cried out. "You can't blame them. We've all been searching for answers." She was desperate, reaching for the human connection, the glimmer of understanding she hoped existed in Russell's darkened heart. His gaze locked onto hers, and the tension snapped like a taut wire. Answers? You want answers? He stepped forward again, eyes wild, adrenaline pulsing through him like wildfire. How about this? You want the secret? You want to know the whole truth about this place? Yes. Alice breathed, her heart racing. Show me, Russell. You don't have to go through with this. We can find justice together. A storm brewed behind his eyes, and the chaos inside him roared for release. But then, just as quickly, something shifted again. Doubt flickered, dancing on the edge of his rage like a candle in the wind. What if? He whispered, almost to himself, the weight of his choice crashing down on him. He was teetering on the brink, and every second felt like eternity. Then, in that moment of vulnerability, the door behind them swung open, the shrill sound of sirens blaring outside. Shadows lurked in the hallway. Police. The crowd erupted into frightened whispers, chaos spilling like an overfilled cup. Russell. Alice urged. Don't let them. Before she could finish, the world outside rushed in, a green flash of uniforms and lights breaking through their moment of reckoning. At that crucial juncture, surrounded by fear and noise, what would Russell choose? What if their battle had only just begun? As uncertainty filled the room like smoke, Alice's heart pounded against her ribs, knowing one decision could alter everything. Would Russell embrace the darkness or finally step into the light? The abrupt entry of police flooded the room with a harsh glare that felt disorienting. Sirens wailed, the sound red as blood, stirring dread among the crowd. It was chaos. Officers burst in, their eyes scanning for threats, fingers twitching at their holsters. Russell jerked at the noise, his grip tightening on the weapon. Get back! He shouted, his voice rising above the din. Adrenaline coursed through Alice's veins, igniting fear with each frantic heartbeat. You think you can just walk in here and take me down? You don't know what you're doing. The police formed a barrier, weapons drawn, creating an impenetrable wall between Russell and the crowd. Alice's heart sank. Russell, please. You don't need to do this. She stretched her arms out, desperate to bridge the widening gap. His eyes darted between her and the officers, flickers of indecision battling behind the rage. They'll never listen. They're all in on it. He cried, the wildness of his thoughts spilling out in gasps. You want to see the truth? It's right in front of you. The officers exchanged glances, seeking a crack in Russell's resolve. We can talk this out, one of them called, voice calm and steady. Just put down the weapon. We can help you. In that moment, Alice saw it, the flicker in Russell's gaze, the confusion dousing the fire just a little. But the gleam of his weapon glinted under the fluorescent lights, a stark reminder of the path he had chosen. You want to help me? He spat, venom dripping from his words. You think you can help someone who's already dead? Panic gripped Alice's throat, threatening her voice once more. You have to fight, Russell. Fight against whatever's trying to pull you down. Each word felt like a lifeline thrown into a stormy sea. Behind her, someone gasped. The crowd swelled with murmurs, eyes darting toward the door where a shadow emerged. It was a woman, her silhouette stiff with authority. She moved with purpose. Louise, Russell's former boss. Her face was a mask of unreadable composure, eyes locking onto Russell with an intensity that could cut through metal. Russell. She called, her voice ringing clear above the chaos. You know me. We can face this together. Just put down the gun. The name hung in the air like a lingering ghost. Russell's jaw tightened, memories flashed behind his eyes. You're part of the machine. You don't get to act like you care now. Louise stepped forward, not backing down. I was wrong, Russell. I see that now. But this isn't you. It doesn't have to be like this. The dam inside him wavered, and the weapon trembled as he fought against the storm of emotions roiling within. Alice stepped closer, heart aching at the fracture forming in Russell's resolve. "The truth can set you free," she said, her voice threaded with urgent hope. "This isn't just your battle anymore. It's ours." The officers shifted, their composure tense, ready for any sign of aggression. Russell's eyes darted around the room, absorbing each desperate face, each voice urging him to reclaim himself. Then, in a moment that seemed suspended in time, Russell took a shaky breath and lowered the weapon just a fraction. In that flicker, the room collectively held its breath, poised on the brink of salvation or destruction. But before he could decide, a loud crash shattered the fragile tension. The door flew open again, punctuating the silence with chaos. Another figure burst inside, panting and wild-eyed. "They're coming. We need to go now." Everyone turned. Fear rippled through the crowd as the room erupted once more, confusion reigning openly. What was happening? Who was coming? In that instant, with the walls closing in and truth dangling just out of reach, Alice felt the ground beneath her shift. Russell's future hung in the balance, but could they survive whatever storm was brewing outside? The moment had come to decide, but the real question loomed larger: what had they unleashed with Russell's initial choice, and would they survive the storm on the horizon? The sudden chaos drowned everything in a haze of panic. Alice's heart raced. The wild-eyed newcomer, a man with disheveled hair and clothes torn from a hasty escape, gasped for breath, every word steeped in urgency. "They're coming. We need to go now." Russell froze, the weapon wavering in his grasp. Like a deer caught in headlights, he scanned the faces in the crowd, each one reflecting the growing anxiety around him. He lowered the gun a little more, but it still glinted ominously, a dark promise of what could unfold. "Who's coming?" he demanded, voice thick with dread. The tension in the air thickened like a storm cloud, ready to unleash chaos. "Those men, they cross-check everybody. We don't have much time." The man's voice trembled, sweat glistening on his brow. He turned to the officers standing firm at the entrance. "You don't understand. They're after him." Alice felt time slow, fears intertwining in her mind. "Russell!" she shouted over the growing noise, "we can still leave. Just put the gun down." But it was too late. The police exchanged looks, their calm unraveling into heightened alertness. One officer gestured, signaling those outside to move in closer. "We need you to step away from the weapon, sir. It's not safe for anyone here." Louise, still standing resolute, caught Russell's gaze. "Please, Russell, we need to get out of here. Trust me." But her words felt like pebble drops in the tumultuous sea of uncertainty, barely making a ripple. Alice's gut twisted. "Trust her, Russell. You know she wants to help. This isn't just about you." The thrumming chaos swelled around them, shouts and cries echoed, each rushing heartbeat pounding violently like a ticking clock. Russell's face contorted, anguish and fury battling for dominance. "This is my life. You don't know what's at stake. They'll kill anyone who gets in their way." Alice stepped forward, trembling with need. She had never seen him so vulnerable, so raw. "You're alive, Russell. You're not just a pawn in their game. You can choose." Then, as if summoned by their fear, heavy footsteps echoed from the hallway, the sound growing more menacing with each step. Shadows loomed, dark silhouettes approaching. The air felt electric, charged with impending danger. The newcomer's eyes widened. "They're here." He turned, panic twisting his features into a mask of sheer terror. "We have to move, now." The officers shouted orders, urgency flooding their voices. Alice's heart sank. Nothing aligned. This spiral of fate twisted tighter. Russell's resolve wavered, his fingers trembling around the pistol. "Russell, please," Alice coaxed, her voice almost breaking. "We can escape this together." And just like that, in the middle of the roaring storm, Russell slowly lowered the gun. The room held a collective breath, a heartbeat of silence before the storm, but it was in that very moment, he echoed, "What if I'm not worth saving?" Doubt could tear the strongest bonds apart. They stood on the edge, shadows lengthening behind them. From the darkness, they heard the cold, certain command, "Drop your weapons." Now. Chaos erupted again as the first officer lunged forward, but the weight of Russell's decision pressed heavily in the air. As they scrambled for safety, Alice's eyes searched desperately for hope. Would they find a way out? Or would they become another casualty of a game they never intended to play? One final question tightened the tension, as the walls closed in: who would emerge unbroken from the storm, and would it be worth the price they might have to pay? The noise of shouting echoed, slicing through the heavy air like a knife. Everyone's eyes darted toward the entrance as the two officers moved in, adrenaline crackling along their spines. The newcomer stumbled back, panic etched across his face. He grabbed Alice's arm, pulling her closer. "They're not just looking for him. They'll take anyone who gets in their way." Alice's pulse quickened as the weight of his words sank in. She looked to Russell, whose expression betrayed a flood of emotions. Fear. Confusion. Guilt. It all clashed within him like opposing forces. The officers were near, and she thought of the burden resting on the bridge they had built together, shaky but somehow still standing. "Russell, please." Alice urged, her voice rising above the surrounding clamor. "We can't let them separate us. You matter. We can fight together." He shook his head, eyes flickering to the officers inching closer. What if it's not enough? What if the officer at the front raised his weapon, voice steady yet urgent? "Step away from the gun. You are surrounded. Drop it now." In that moment, amid the rising fear and tension, the shadows from the hallway sharpened into figures, men dressed in dark suits, their eyes cold, surveying the room like predators scanning for prey. There was no mistaking that they were that which the newcomer feared. "No, it's too late." The wild-eyed man yelled, panic spilling into his voice. "They'll kill you. You have to run." A deep chill wrapped around Alice like ice. The decisions lay heavy before them: confront the looming threat or flee into the unknown. The very idea sent jolts of dread through her. But no matter what would happen next, they needed direction. Russell's gaze flickered between Alice, the officers, and the advancing shadows. "I can't," his voice cracked. "They'll find me regardless." "No." Louise stepped forward, unyielding. "You can't think like that. If you don't trust in this moment, you're already lost." The shadows drew nearer, their leaders motioning subtly, faces impassive. Russell's breath came fast, quickened thoughts darting through his mind like fireflies in the night. The lead officer's voice resonated with urgency. "Decision time, people. I want to ask again. Drop the weapon." Alice could feel the helplessness leaking into her heart. "Russell, you have to trust me. Let them help you." Before he could respond, a loud crashing sound reverberated through the hall, startling everyone. A table flipped over, creating an instant barricade. From behind it, a group burst forth, armed and determined, the same men they feared most. "Get down!" One of them yelled, aiming a gun at the officers, chaos exploding like a firework gone wrong. Time fractured into chaos. Alice grabbed Russell, pulling him down as bullets tore through the air, shards of chaos mixing with pain-filled screams. Her heart raced with the force of a storm as reality snapped into focus. They had crossed a line. This was no longer just a standoff or a plea for mercy. Huddled close to Russell, she could feel his body tremble. "Stay with me," she gasped, desperate to reach his crumbling resolve. "Run," he whispered, his once fierce voice now just a breath. "It's too late for me." Suddenly, disbelief crashed over her like a wave. "No. We're in this together. You fight for your life, and I'll fight for mine." As the gunfire erupted, Russell glanced at the mayhem, knowing fear had cornered him. It pushed him to an edge not even he had seen coming. A shattering crash brought his attention back. The crowd's screams grew louder as the armed group pressed through, relentless and focused. All that mattered was survival, and both courage and betrayal tugged at his heart. Before he could think, Alice made a decision. Spraying a quick glance at the nearest exit, she shouted, "This way. Follow me." And with a push, she pulled Russell up, hearts pounding in synchrony. As they bolted, the shadows pursued relentlessly, the storm of dread following right behind them like shadows in the dark. Could they escape from the web closing in around them? As they made their way through the chaos, a truth loomed larger. Was their fight worth it after all? The hall erupted into chaos, the air thick with gunpowder and desperation. Alice tightened her grip on Russell's arm, dragging him through swarming bodies, each face twisted in fear. Shouts mixed with the relentless sound of gunfire, creating a deafening symphony of panic. Her heart hammered loudly in her chest, a steady reminder that time was slipping away. "Over there!" she shouted, pointing toward an emergency exit at the far end of the corridor. A flickering light indicated hope, but it felt as fragile as the thread of determination that bound them together. The shadows behind them shifted into frenzy as men in dark suits pursued without hesitation. Their eyes gleamed with a wild intent, and Alice felt a cold sweat trickle down her back. She glanced back, her stomach knotting as she caught a glimpse of the armed men charging forward. "Keep moving," Russell urged, his voice breaking through the cacophony, though his steps faltered. The two ducked behind a toppled table as bullets ricocheted around them, splintering wood and sending shards flying. The smell of smoke filled her nostrils, but she couldn't stop. The exit was so close. "What is wrong with you?" Alice hissed urgently. "You need to fight for yourself, Russell." His eyes glistened, the weight of self-doubt evident. "I don't know if I can. It's like they've already won." Alice's pulse quickened with desperation. "No. They can't take this from us." She felt the fire of determination rekindle within her. "Remember everything you've been through. You're stronger than this." He hesitated, his internal battle raging in silence. She could see the flicker of hope struggling to keep alive in his guarded eyes. With a swift decision, she pushed up from the table and grabbed his hand. "Now, run." They dashed for the exit, adrenaline fueling their legs as they skirted past the debris and cries of terror. Just steps away from salvation, she glanced behind, only to see a shadow launching forward. "Get down!" she screamed, instinctively pulling Russell to the floor as bullets slammed into the doorway behind them, splintering wood in a shower of dust and debris. Alice's heart raced as they rolled away from the danger, their bodies colliding against the ground. It took a second to process the chaotic scene unfolding around them, her breath hitching as Russell's eyes widened in shock. In a sudden, split-second decision, Alice grabbed a nearby metal rod, instinctively brandishing it as a weapon. "We'll fight if we have to." As they regained their feet, Russell nodded, a fire igniting in his gaze. The shadows closing in weren't just men, they were a reckoning. Their determination fused, they sprinted toward the faint light of freedom, hearts racing together like drums in a war march. Then in an instant, the officers by the door regained control. An authoritative shout rang out, "Stop right there." Alice froze, the rod clattering from her hands as panic washed over her. "They can't take you," she shouted desperately, confusion and fear colliding inside her. "Russell, keep going." But he hesitated, caught between the officers aiming their weapons and the looming threat behind them. "What if they're right? What if I can't?" Before she could respond, the lead officer shouted again, this time a commanding presence ringing in his voice. "We can help you. Just cooperate, and nobody else gets hurt." For a brief moment, hope twisted with uncertainty in the air, and Alice felt the fragility of their decisions weigh heavily on them. In that split second, Russell met her gaze, silently searching for reassurance, but the chaos surrounded them like a whirlpool threatening to pull them down. The thought of losing him sent a shockwave of fear coursing through her veins. "What do we do, Russell?" The conflict in his eyes mirrored her own fear and desperation. Did they trust the officers with their lives or continue to flee into the unknown? Just as he opened his mouth to respond, a chilling sound cut through the air, an unmistakable click of a safety being released. How much time do we have left? The shadows danced dangerously. Close behind them, their intentions clear. Would they seal their fate in this moment of hesitation? As the tension snapped taut, the decision loomed before them, heavy and urgent. They had to act fast, but would they choose refuge or risk it all? Alice knew one thing above all else: they couldn't let fear dictate their choices. She felt the weight of Russell's indecision. It gripped him like a vice. "Russell," she whispered urgently, "this isn't just about you anymore. We need to live. Drop the weapon and let us work together." Her words hung in the air like a lifeline thrown in deep waters. She hoped he'd grab onto it. The moment stretched, breaths caught as if the world had paused. She glanced at the officers, hands steady on their triggers, prepared for chaos. "We're on your side," one shouted, urgency piercing through the noise. "We can help you through this." For a heartbeat, Russell's resolve cracked. Hope flickered behind his eyes like a candle in the storm. "You think they'll help me?" He shot back, raw emotion spilling into his voice. "You think any of them care?" Before Alice could answer, the air exploded, a deafening bang ricocheting through the hall. Someone had fired. Chaos erupted in a torrid wave, bodies diving for cover, fear flooding the room. Alice yanked Russell towards the exit, her heart racing faster than her feet. "We're moving now." "Wait!" he shouted, his voice cut through the chaos. "If we leave we might never see the truth. What's the point?" She could see the anguish in his expression, the desperation gnawing at his resolve. "The truth? Let us find it together. Outside, we might actually stand a chance." Russell inhaled sharply, the weight of the choice before him threatening to swallow him whole. In that moment, Alice felt the urgency of all those living in shadows, the victims Russell spoke of. They had to fight not just for themselves but for every soul straddling the line of despair and hope. "You have heard me," Alice pressed, her heart pounding with need, "and I've heard you. We'll stand together. We can break the cycle." But the shadows stretched ever closer, the officers looping around with steely determination. "Now," she urged, pushing her own fears aside. "We get out. Together." With a flicker of understanding, a shift, Russell nodded, the walls of doubt beginning to crumble. He raised the weapon, looking into Alice's eyes, his expression rife with resolve. It felt like everything hung on the razor-thin thread of that moment. "Okay. Together," he murmured, lowering the gun, surrendering a battle born out of pain. Just then, the front door burst open with a loud crash, two officers storming in with an intensity that sent a shockwave through the room. "Now!" one shouted, rounding on Russell. "Get!" Alice shouted, urgency thrumming through her. Yet before they could make their escape, one of the armed men burst through the broken door with a furious shout. "No! You're not going anywhere." As chaos swirled, Alice felt the ground shake underfoot. She pulled Russell forward. "This way." Then came the rush, bodies surging in every direction, a tidal wave of desperate humanity. But as they made their move, Alice caught Russell's eye once more. "We can make it. Just trust me." Adrenaline surged as they ducked low, tumbling past the cacophony, barely avoiding the cannonade of chaos behind them. Leaving the shadows of fear behind, they barreled toward redemption, feet pounding, hearts racing. The outside air hit them like a jolt of cold water, bursting through the suffocating walls of the corporate haven. Sirens wailed in the distant city, unsettling but oddly liberating. They stepped onto the street, smoke rising behind them like ghosts of their past. They turned to face each other, hearts heavy yet light with the weight of a new decision. "We did it!" Alice exclaimed, breathless, joy glazing her features. Russell nodded, expression both pained and relieved. But the game isn't over yet, is it? What about the truth? No, it's just started, Alice assured him, feeling a fierce determination ignite within. Together, we'll uncover everything. They set off as shadows flickered in the distance, their past kept at bay but no longer overpowering. Bound together by trauma, strength, and the hope of speaking their truth, they would forge a new path, one that opened up the world before them and to those waiting in the unnamed dark. As they walked, Alice squeezed Russell's hand, a silent promise binding their fates. Together, they would face whatever came next. The evening sky shifted colors, an amber glow illuminating their path as they took the first step toward a future that was theirs to define. And in that moment, they finally understood, the shadows may chase them, but they no longer had to live in fear of what lay beyond. Together, they would write their own story. While they moved forward, it became clear that their adventure was only beginning, one of justice, truth, and the grittiness of life resisting all odds. Now, speaking of adventures, if you haven't done it already, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that are about to drop. This is the moment to show your support. And smash that like button now, it really feeds the algorithm and keeps us going. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending, we want to hear it all. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support is what keeps this community alive, so let us make it strong together.